Hi guys, welcome to our daily encounter. In Acts chapter 7, we see Stephen's defense, as we found in chapter 6 that he was accused of speaking against Jerusalem, and probably more specifically the temple, and then also that he was teaching that Jesus would destroy that place and alter the customs that were handed down to them through Moses. And Stephen is giving a defense in chapter 7 as he's standing before the council, and he's going to basically make 2 points, and these points become clear as you get to the end of his defense, and that is that God is sovereign and that they were just like their forefathers in rejecting the messengers and the deliverers that God sent them time and time again over history. And he's like, you guys are right in line with those guys. And so it's interesting how Stephen kind of turns it around. You know, he goes from defense to offense. It shows that, you know, you guys are wrong. You have a limited view of God and his working. And then also you are just like your forefathers. You can't see what God is doing, and you're rejecting the people who are sent to you to tell you what God is doing and reveal God's will to you. But within this defense, you know, he shows that, you know, God doesn't dwell in buildings or houses made by human hands. He mentions how David wanted to build a house for God, but his son ended up building it. But in verse 47, it says, but Solomon built a house for him. Continuing in verse 48, however, the Most High does not dwell in houses made by human hands. As the prophet says, heaven is my throne, and the earth is the footstool of my feet. What kind of house will you build for me, says the Lord? Or what place is there for my rest? Was it not my hand which made all these things? In other words, even in the midst of all the celebration and all the wonderful things that were going on in connection to the temple, even the glory of the Lord filled the temple, and some wonderful things were happening in connection to Solomon's temple. In the midst of all that, still, God is very clear to say that you can't limit me to this temple. I'm manifesting myself to you in this temple, but I'm not limited by this temple. And that's an important point for Stephen to make in his defense, when it's being said of him that he was saying that the temple would be destroyed, which was really in line with what Jesus had taught as well in the Olivet Discourse. But nonetheless, the idea here is that, okay, even if Stephen is speaking and teaching that the temple would be destroyed, that in no way does anything against God, because God was there before the temple, and he was there during the temple, but yet above the temple, and he'll be around long after the temple is gone. In other words, God's not limited to the temple. As wonderful as the temple was, it served a particular purpose. It pointed the people towards Christ and giving some pictures and images and foreshadowings of Christ. But that wasn't the end all of everything. But now God had made the promise that he would dwell everywhere, that he would dwell with his people, that he would dwell with them and in them and be with them, that they would be, that he would be their God and that they would be his people. And so really what we have now is much better than what they thought they had under the old covenant. A God in a limited space, in a temporary temple. You know, now we see that, and they should have seen it too, that God is above all those things and that God is everywhere. So how does this help us on a day-to-day basis? It shows us that God is not limited to one location or one space. You know, it might be true that we worship God at church on Sunday, and it might very well be the case that, you know, as we went together as a community to worship the Lord, and maybe we experienced the presence of God in a very special way, but he's not limited to that. Everywhere that we go, we can enjoy the presence of God. God is with us wherever we go. If we go in the wilderness, way off somewhere, if we're in a city somewhere, if we're stuck behind a desk in a cubicle in some office, in some stuffy office, in a high rise somewhere, wherever we are, God is always with us. And that's a wonderful thing. We don't have to travel to Jerusalem. We don't have to go to a specific location to be in the presence of God. We can be in the presence of God everywhere. And that's a wonderful thing. And the more and more we keep God in the forefront of our minds, the more and more we direct our hearts to Him and open our minds to Him and get into His Word and be diligent about praying and worshiping Him, the more and more we will experience the awareness of His presence. And we'll become more and more aware that He is with us, which will comfort us and strengthen us and help us as we get through the day. And so let's take what Stephen is saying here very seriously. We have a God who's not limited by any space, by any buildings or anything like that, but is with us always and everywhere. And when that's a wonderful and beautiful promise and a wonderful and beautiful reality that we get to experience every day. And so let's embrace that today. Let's abide in the presence of God today by praying to Him, staying in communion with Him, worshiping Him, getting into His Word, doing whatever we can to direct our minds and our hearts towards Him. And as a result, He has promised that if we draw near to Him, He will draw near to us. And we can abide in His presence, enjoying the joy of His presence all throughout the day. So let's take full advantage of that. So these are the things we can reflect on and think about as we do our reading today. With that, guys, I do thank you for watching the video today. Hope you guys have a great day. Love you guys. God bless.